This rapper got the longest sentence in history for self-snitching, and was even sent to the same supermax prison they're holding El Chapo Guzman, former leader of the Sinaloa cartel, who had already escaped from prison once. Ronald Herron, also known as Rod Diggs, was born in 1982 and raised in the Gowanus projects of Brooklyn, New York. Growing up in the tough area, which is far more gentrified now, he would eventually get involved in criminal activity and gangs, in particular the Bloods, finding himself in and out of different correctional facilities his whole adolescent life. There would be a shooting on September 8, 1998 in Wyckoff Gardens, a nearby project where an innocent bystander would be shot and killed. He would actually be shot in the leg on October 7, 2000 over a dispute about a drug debt, and while recovering at Kings County Hospital, he would have his cousins kill his shooter in retaliation, strengthening his reputation for violence. This is Rod Diggs. He would even rap about this on a song with Uncle Murda on the Jeezy beat for Slow Down, saying, "I don't respect the shooter because he shot me in the legs, and 2 days later the little homie was dead. See, if he was smart, he would have shot me in the head because I could get you shot from a hospital bed." He would find himself facing a murder charge in 2001 for the killing of a man, an alleged rival dealer named Frederick Brooks. On June 16, 2001, it was alleged that Rod Diggs had shot and killed Frederick Brooks in the lobby of 198 Bond Street, shooting him in the face, neck, in the back, and in the back of the head, leaving him to bleed out on the floor. Rod Diggs worked with members of his criminal enterprise, the Bloods, to dispose of the firearm that was used in the killing. He was arrested in July of 2001 and tried in the New York State Criminal Court for the murder of Frederick Brooks, and the government said they had 2 eyewitnesses. We'll call them Witness A and Witness B. They both made recorded statements to the assistant district attorney that they saw Rod Diggs shoot Brooks in the head. They would also identify Rod Diggs as the shooter out of a police lineup. But what happened next was shocking. Those witnesses refused to testify at the trial, recanting their prior statements and stating that they had been threatened by Rod Diggs and his associates. Rod Diggs had also had another witness, C in this case, saw Ron Brooks arguing loudly, tried to split it up, then followed them into the lobby when he saw Rod Diggs push Frederick Brooks against the mailboxes, pulled out a silver gun, and shot Brooks. He knew that Ronald would have him killed if he testified against him to lie about his role in the murder. Witness D testified at the trial that he saw Rod Diggs kill Brooks, but refused to identify him while on the stand for fear of retaliation. One of Rod Diggs' affiliates, James Long, had placed a call to one of the witness's mother's workplace, and the witness also received a phone call from Rod Diggs himself. That's how much power Rod Diggs had in his community, and he ended up walking away from this case acquitted, beating the body as he would later call it, but it wouldn't be his last run-in with the law. Throughout the early 2000s, Rod Diggs would continue to build up his set of the Bloods, called the Murderous Mad Dogs, through drug dealing, crack out of 423 Baltic Street in Brooklyn. He would continue to expand, gaining a reputation for violence by hiring dealers to distribute for him and muscle to enact violence on competition and to protect the stash houses. He was involved in extortion, robbing, killing, you name it. He was briefly locked up for drug trafficking, but still maintaining the enterprise, and when he was released in July of 2007, he continued with it, but with a bit of a new vision on the horizon: rapping. However, things didn't slow down. There was a local drug dealer in 2007 who the documents referred to as John Doe, who also sold crack in the same projects, 423 Baltic. Rod Diggs directed 2 people to rob John Doe, and they pulled up on him in a building lobby. In the midst of this, a friend of John Doe, who also worked with Rod Diggs, walked in and tried to intervene and stop the robbery, but it didn't work. One of the guys pulled out a pistol, while the other guy searched the guy's pockets, taking between $600 to $700 in cash and diamond earrings from John Doe, leaving immediately after. Rod Diggs would see the same John Doe later on the 12th floor, warning him not to sell drugs on his area, and he would quit for a couple of months before coming back and requesting Rod Diggs permission to sell there. And Rod Diggs granted it, but made the stipulation that he would have to buy his product from Rod directly. This John Doe would also become a supervisor to deliveries from suppliers and dispersing it to street dealers. In early May of 2008, a man by the name of Richard Russo was in the lobby of 423 Baltic Street with other members of Rod Diggs' crew that were selling drugs. He made some not-so-nice comments about Rod Diggs, questioning his authority and role in the Gowanus, and threatening to kill him. On May 9, 2008, just a couple of days later, Rod Diggs would approach Russo, who was in the lobby again, and confronted him, telling him to come to the elevator with another member of Rod Diggs' team and he shot and killed Richard Russo on the elevator of the 423 Baltic Street building. He would give cash to one of his guys to keep them from talking to police, as well as getting rid of any evidence and disposal of the firearm that was used to kill Russo. Rod Diggs also made the call to kill a rival of his by the name of Kendall Robinson, aka Smurf. Rod Diggs wasn't too happy with the fact that Robinson had been a part of several violent events surrounding the block that Rod Diggs was operating his business in, and he felt like it was harming the flow of money. They, Rod Diggs and one of his goons, spent a good amount of time hunting Robinson, and on September 13, 2008, on Rod Diggs' behalf, one of his goons shot Robinson in front of 185 Nevin Street with a .40 cal, but he survived. Rod Diggs wasn't present during the shooting, but other members were there. But just to give you the level of menace these people were, Kendall Robinson would be sentenced in 2013 at the age of 21 to life without parole for executing a 16-year-old girl that pressed assault charges against one of his homies and also perjured himself on the stand during trial. Kendall Robinson, 21, shot a fleeing Altea Conyers 3 times and then stood over the terrified teen as she begged for her life, and then put 3 more bullets into her head and face as she lay on a Borum Hill street in 2010. Robinson targeted Conyers because she reported his pal for knocking her into a fence during a street beef and refused to drop the charges after the goon was locked up. "My daughter got murdered because she wanted justice," Mom Melissa Conyers said in a statement read by prosecutors. "These men sleep in their beds every night, but my daughter sleeps in the dirt." The unrepentant Robinson, who smiled and smirked throughout his sentencing, proclaimed his innocence. This was in 2013. He was dealing with Rod Diggs' people and violence in 2008, so he was 16 into this mess when he got shot by Rod Diggs' people. In November of 2008, Rod Diggs and his team got into a dispute with another crew that was selling drugs in the Wyckoff Gardens projects. One of Rod Diggs' people that was selling crack for him in Wyckoff was told by a man named Victor Zapata that she couldn't sell there anymore. Rod Diggs' partner, George or Jorge Mejia, would go over there to confront Zapata, and on November 9, 2008, Mejia would be shot about 5 times. Rod Diggs and 2 other members of his crew recorded a meeting that was even posted on YouTube in a now deleted video that was titled Project Music and was an extended part of a music video where they're in the hospital with Mejia on the hospital bed recovering, and Rod Diggs and the others planned the murder. In a Daily News article, it reads, "See you soon in a cemetery near you," Heron warned Zapata in the 1-minute video clip. Heron's associate, George Mussolini Mejia, who was seen in the video lying in the bed, swathed in bandages, surrounded by several members of their drug crew, starts ranting for the camera and referring to the crew as warriors. On December 23, 2008, one of Rod Diggs' hitters was arrested with a loaded .22 and body armor while running away from police, and Rod Diggs managed to get out of there and avoid being arrested. On February 26, 2009, Mejia was arrested in his apartment at 426 Baltic Street with a .45 and a bunch of weed. He would be federally indicted and plead guilty to felony possession of a firearm and sentenced to 7 years. On September 27, 2009, Rod Diggs found Victor Zapata, who had issued the shooting on Mejia a year ago. He walked him down and shot him in the Wyckoff Gardens courtyard. Zapata would fall to the ground, and Rod Diggs would stand over him and shoot him multiple times, killing him. On October 1st, 2009, only several days later, Rod Diggs and a homie of his were arrested in a BMW that he had double parked on a crowded street. Police got a loaded 9mm with 10 rounds of ammunition and no serial number from his associate, with evidence that it had been discharged recently, sometime in 2010, but it wouldn't be revealed until testimony in Rod Diggs' court case in 2014 by his driver. There was a story that Rod Diggs was kicked out of one of Jim Jones' studio sessions in New York, where Jim Jones said, according to testimony from Rod Diggs' driver, "Take that blood-ish outside," when Rod left with several of his goons, breaking the glass door on his way out of the studio. Later that night, Raheem, also known as Rod Diggs, alongside some of his goons, tracked down Jim Jones to a strip club in Mount Vernon called Sue's Rendezvous. As Raheem is walking into the party, the DJ shouts, "Rod Diggs in the building," and Jim Jones had his eyes pop out of their sockets like a Looney Tunes cartoon. The driver said he looked like he had seen a ghost and quickly left the venue. Rod Diggs would briefly speak on this in an interview afterward, basically letting everyone know, yeah, the situation is cool now, but I pulled up on them. One of the most interesting and comedic arrests was when he did some light littering. He dropped a gum wrapper and a police officer walked up to cite him for littering, but saw that he was wearing body armor. I stopped hundreds of people in my career, and he's the first person who was wearing body armor. Rod Diggs was subpoenaed for the heavy military-style body armor he was wearing the following day. The press tried to portray this as what took down this massive criminal enterprise, but that really wasn't the case. The government had been building a case against him for a very long time, as we'll see in the near future. On October 5, 2010, the NYPD and marshals collaborated together on observing Rod Diggs go into Club Amnesia at 609 West 29th Street in Manhattan, with two of his associates in the car. Rod Diggs and his homies stepped out the car and were arrested immediately. They ordered the other criminal, the driver, to turn off the engine and step out, and he sped off. It was only a couple of minutes before the NYPD were able to catch him, too. The insane part is while the majority of these crimes and murders were going on, Rod Diggs was vlogging and building up a rap career too. On Waka Flocka's debut album Flockavelli, Rod Diggs was featured on the song Live by the Gun alongside Uncle Murda, the Murda Team, where he raps, "When you see me, you know that I got it on me, either the Desert Eagle, that 50 or that 40. I'm strapped up, shorty, ask my dude Waka, ask my man Uncle when I murder with the chopper. He shot me 5 times, 2 days later he dead. Shooting at the 5 is committing a suicide. I'm a murderous mad dog, that's the acronym. MMD, you front on me," he clapping him. "I'm the big homie, act like you don't know me. Put in my own work, but they'll kill for me. I'm Dudison, Jamaica, front on me then I make them. Whole country shot cause I'm a real Dundada." Everything he rapped here would be found to be true. Like we said earlier in the video, he rapped the verse about 2 days later a shooter getting killed, which happened. MMD, the set of bloods that he repped, he would be charged for that. And the 40 cal was used by one of his homies to kill someone. His homies have killed for him, and he's even killed multiple times himself, like the cases with Victor Zapata and Frederick Brooks. They would even shoot the music video for the song in the Gowanus projects. On another bar on his Slow Down remix, like we said earlier, he would rap, "Diggs, if you want to smoke a man on the Ave, then go and beat the body with an 18B, and if you ain't never beat a body, then you ain't like me," which was the murder of Frederick Brooks, which they would later get him on with a slew of other charges. You can even see Shoddy, the enforcer and guy who brought 6ix9ine into the 9 Trey Bloods, who's serving a 15-year sentence himself right now, as a cameo in a music video for the song You Got Me Effed Up, that Rod Diggs was also in. Rod Diggs would always be repping Vanguard for his music and brand. Several months before his final arrest and a month after the passing of his mother, Rod Diggs would drop his most popular solo song ever, Eulogy, where he eerily raps many lyrics that would foreshadow the outcome of his life. Now while they talk about fiction, I'ma spit real rap, irrefutable try to dispute my facts. Man, I'm sick, only 14 years, but that's the last time I let a man see tears. The incident Rod Diggs is referring to here happened in 1994, when he was playing a game of cops and robbers with his friends. 2 teams, one with fake guns. Nicholas Hayward, a 13-year-old friend of Ronald Herron, was shot and killed by a police officer who thought the gun was a real 9mm. There's even a New York Times article still online about this. Nick said he wanted to go down, recalled Ronald Herron, and playfully pushed one of them so that he could be the first down the stairway. I heard Nick say, "We're playing," and then I heard a boom, recalled Cottrell Fowler, a friend. Nicholas Hayward, his 18-inch toy rifle held up by his right ear, got to the final step, and then his life was ended by a real gunshot from the revolver of a real police officer, Brian George, a 23-year-old on routine patrol for the Housing Authority. According to one of the boys, Ronald Herron, 14, Officer George was openly crying when he was let out of 423 Baltic by other officers. A very haunting moment to witness at such a young age. Raised by my older cousins, helped me serve them, they helped me burn them, they gave me the hammers, they contributed to the death toll in the Bahamas, downtown Brooklyn. I'ma stop under all that. Too much information to make me my own rat, but I'm talking about facts, they lying in their raps. Well, he did eventually become his own rat. Rod Diggs would officially be indicted on February 13, 2012 and hit with 23 counts, including racketeering, murder, 3 of them, murder in aid of racketeering, murder conspiracy, attempted murder, 3 of them, robbery, illegal use and possession of firearms, and narcotics trafficking. He was facing the death penalty at this time, and only a month later, while awaiting his trial, he would be caught with a cell phone in his solitary confinement cell in March of 2012. Ronald "Rod" Diggs Herron, a self-styled rapper from the Gowanus Housing Project in Brooklyn, who has used Twitter and YouTube to threaten violence against informants and the children of police officers, is being held in a special wing of the Federal Metropolitan Correctional Center in Lower Manhattan, where a large cadre of Ranking Bloods members is incarcerated. Prison officials and U.S. Marshals were alarmed by the discovery of the phone in his quarters and fear Herron could have been using it to coordinate plans with other Bloods to stage an escape as he's transported from the Manhattan facility to court appearances in Brooklyn. Heron faces a possible death sentence if convicted of a series of murders tied to drug distribution. The security lapse at the facility is even more suspicious, officials say, considering inmates in solitary spend 23 hours a day in their single cells with just 1 hour out in a solo cage to exercise. Now investigators suspect that Heron has been having a sexual relationship with a female prison guard who may have smuggled in the phone. The government is very concerned about other orchestrated plan by the murderous Mad Dog Bloods to intimidate witnesses, Prosecutor Carter Burwell said in Brooklyn federal court Friday, referring to the street gang headed by Heron. Burwell revealed that one of Heron's top lieutenants, George Mejia, tried to scare a witness from testifying in the gang leader's pending murder and drug trafficking case. The prosecutor also told Judge Nicholas Garofis that Heron was in possession of an item in jail that could be used to intimidate witnesses, referring to the phone. If you guys recall from earlier in this video, Rod Diggs was able to beat the body in the early 2000s because of witness intimidation, and the same people who pointed him out decided not to testify against him in the Frederick Brooks case, which he was charged for once again. A lot of the press was focusing on his lyrics, but that really was just icing on the cake. What really screwed Rod Diggs was everyone that testified against him. One of which was his man Vincent Winfield, who filmed a lot of the vlogs that Rod Diggs was in and also carried his gun. He was formerly a dealer for Rod Diggs before telling him he didn't want to just sit around waiting for junkies, and Rod Diggs would find another role for him that didn't involve any of that. However, on December 21, 2008, Winfield and Rod Diggs were stopped by police outside the Gowanus houses, both fleeing. Winfield slipped on snow and ice and was caught with 2 guns while Rod Diggs got away, an incident we spoke about earlier. Winfield pleaded guilty to his charges and got 57 months. So he should have been out while Rod Diggs had gotten charged, but all of the fighting and selling drugs on the inside got him extra time. So in 2010, he called the Federal Marshal Service and made a deal with the Attorney General while they were investigating Heron and agreed to tell them everything for a 5K1 letter that's the same 169 got, recommending leniency on her sentencing. He admits Rod Diggs was his big homie in the Bloods. He admits there was a narcotics trafficking trade. He says he sold drugs and committed these crimes for Rod Diggs. Everything. All while he himself was still imprisoned at GEO, or Queens Detention Facility. Another person who testified was Rafael Gonzalez, aka Feo, who was imprisoned at MCC Federal Prison after being convicted of drugs, sporting a firearm, conspiring after the fact, and also a homicide, for which he was serving 20 years to life. He says he committed all of those crimes and also was the individual that was selling at 198 Bond Street, where Frederick Brooks was killed. He witnessed the before and after of the murder and told everything he knew about the operation. He was released in 2007, and he would go back to the Gowanus, selling for Rod Diggs and becoming Murderous Mad Dog Blood, telling everything about the operation, including other sellers like Crystal Lewis, all for leniency on his sentence. Crystal Lewis was another seller who was a co-defendant and pretty high up when it comes to who was close to Rod Diggs. And she had pleaded guilty, agreeing to testify against him. Crystal grew up in 185 Nevin Street in Wyckoff Gardens that was selling crack from 2003 to 2010 in 423 Baltic in the Gowanus houses. She testified that she met Rod Diggs at 14 years old and they were engaging in sexual activity together. He went to jail soon after that, and then when he came back, she started selling drugs for him. Her responsibilities were to help him sell drugs and to hold his weapons, and she testified to witnessing one of the murders. Then there was another co-defendant, Joseph Garcia, aka Jojo, who started off getting robbed by Rod Diggs. He would begin selling for Rod Diggs after they spoke, and Ross said he didn't like all the freelancing going on. He would continue selling for Rod Diggs for years and be brought in for conspiracy charges alongside Crystal, Rod Diggs, and a bunch of others. He would assist in him being convicted. On Rod Diggs' song Eulogy, he would also rap, "I'ma wave the heat, I solemnly swear, before I let them give me 120 years. 120 years, imagine that there." Well, ironically enough, after being convicted of racketeering and 3 murders on June 26, 2014, he would save himself from the death penalty, which was removed from the table earlier on, but he would be sentenced to 3 life sentences plus 105 years, and his response to the judge would be the following: "You can sentence me to 10 life sentences. I'm only going to die one time, and God have mercy on us all." To which the judge replied, "You are obviously an articulate person, but even today, you make comments that show you are clueless about the misery you've caused." The judge granted him his wish, and added 10 more life sentences, totaling Rod Diggs to a sentence of 12 life terms plus 105 years, and serve it in the infamous ADX Florence Supermax prison, also known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies. This was really controversial but rarely spoken about because it houses the worst of the worst. Just some of the people also in prison here, other than El Chapo, are Zohar Tsarnaev, the Boston Marathon bomber, James Marcello of the Chicago outfit, Larry Hoover, founder of the Gangster Disciples, Mahmoud Abdulhalima and his partners who did the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, founders of the Aryan Brotherhood. This is mainly like mass murderers and terrorists here, and the conditions are brutal with measures to prevent any possible escape or violence. Each inmate is confined to a single prison cell measuring about 7 feet by 12 feet. The cells have a bed, a desk, and a stool, all made of poured concrete. There's a tiny 4-inch wide window designed to prevent inmates from knowing their exact location inside the prison complex. The window allows in light, but it doesn't give any view of the outside world. The cells all have unmovable concrete furniture and a combination sink toilet. There's a small shower with a timer, and the rooms are soundproof to prevent any communication with other inmates. Inmates spend 23 hours a day locked in their cells, and any movement only happens with the escort of multiple guards for exercise or visits. The exercise that is allowed is also very limited, with only one bike or walking track, and the rec yard enclosed by high walls with just a view of the sky, preventing you from any view of the surrounding area. The only communication with the outside world are non-contact visits that are conducted through a thick glass partition and very limited access to monitored phones. There were reports that he was moved to USP Florence High, which is slightly less restrictive with 22 hours a day in the cell, but they are allowed to interact with other inmates. However, when I did a search on the Bureau of Prisons recently, it said that he was in Florence AdMax at USP, which is the initial place he was sentenced to. So I'm not entirely sure where he's at right now, but I will take the BOP inmate search to be accurate. Rod Diggs has tried to appeal his sentence several times based on his First Amendment rights, but all of his appeals have failed.